Hello and welcome to Movers and Shakers. I'm Ken Miller. Today I'm joined by 40th District State Representative David French. He represents Lansing. David, thank you very much for making it in today.
Thank you, Ken.
All right, so we're getting ready for the 2022 Kansas legislative session. We're recording this on January 5th. It gets started Monday next week?
Next Monday.
Next Monday, okay.
We start back to work.
That's right. So let's start with something I think very few people expected a year ago, and we did this a year ago as well, had this interview. But this time around, there seems to be a budget surplus for all intents and purposes. So, and again, I know things are going to change probably a dozen times next week, but how best do lawmakers deal with more funds than expected in your view?
Well, you have to recognize right up front, Ken, that all these extra surplus funds we've got are because of the 2017 tax increase. So we have a surplus because more money is taken from the taxpayer. Mm-hmm. And so we do have more money this year, which is good. There's always places you can spend it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the government can always find places to spend it. I would rather see some of that overtaxing reduced and returned to the taxpayer. There's no need for us to have a surplus and the taxpayer barely getting by with what they're making. So whatever money we can give back to the taxpayer, that's what I want to do. As far as we've also had a tremendous amount of federal COVID money coming back into the state, and that money has taken a lot of the pressure off the state budget because now we can spend federal money instead of state money. The problem is that federal money is the same as
taxpayer money.
It's taxpayer money, and all that is just a small token of what we put into Washington coming back to us. So I think that's probably deserved, but it does provide us additional money that we can use for special projects that are COVID related. Mm-hmm. We also have the infrastructure bill that was just passed that's going to provide a lot of money for the cities and the counties and the states to improve their infrastructure.
And jobs.
And jobs, yeah, absolutely. That's the important thing. It'll provide more jobs. So I think this year we're doing fine. The question is, as you said, how long will that last? The federal money will go away eventually. Right. We won't have that to fall back on. So we got to make sure we live within our budget. That's the bottom line. We cannot do like the federal government and just spend. We've got to live within a budget. Whatever we get, we have to live with.
And building on that, now, several of us have heard about potential plans to provide money to Kansas citizens because of this budget surplus. So how might that work? I mean, the federal government obviously did it and they were cutting checks or they were directly putting it in your checking account. But on a state level, which is obviously the state of Kansas, a smaller level than the federal government for sure, but how might the state try to pull that off?
It would probably be the same way. Whoever the taxpayers are, they would get a check for $250 back in their checking account. That is something that the governor has decided she wants to push, which I think most Republicans would agree with. We want the money to get back to the taxpayer if we have the money.
So that's a done deal, the $250?
I think something is done. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of my colleagues believe that we probably ought to do more than $250 is a one-time check. Mm-hmm. Next year, we're going to give another $250. Mm-hmm. Well, I think most of the legislature wants to go in and cut taxes. We got all this extra money, we ought to cut the taxes. So it's a permanent feedback to the taxpayer and not just a one-time deal. Mm-hmm. I think if $250 is what the governor will approve, then I think we'll definitely get the $250. But I would hope we could maybe do more than that. To me, it's not really as much as we should be giving back to the taxpayer.
But whether it's $250 or some other amount, there still has to be some sort of legislative and or governor action to have that set off.
This should be in her budget, since this is something she's pushing. It should be in her budget this year, and so the legislature will have a chance to look at it and vote on it. And I would think that based on what I know, it should pass fairly easy. If we don't amend it somehow to provide more money even.
Okay, all right, so there was also talk late last year, and I think a lot more folks heard about this, and you were talking about tax relief, talking about removing the sales tax. This would be the state sales tax on food. And I think you and I have even discussed this in past years. I think other than Mississippi, Kansas has the highest sales tax rate on food, which that's atrocious, and I don't think anybody is going to call that a partisan comment. I think everybody believes that's atrocious.
I think you're absolutely right.
Right, so is that still viable? Are you still hearing about that as you get ready to go back to Topeka?
Haven't heard about it, but of course for the last 3 years, the legislature has passed a decrease in the food sales tax by 1 cent, and the governor's vetoed it every single year. So now she wants to do away with all of it, and I think that is much more than we had ever expected her to want to do after she vetoed it 3 times. So I think she'll get a lot of support on that. I think we all agree, like I said, it's the most regressive tax in our system, and everybody pays it, from the very rich to the very poor have to pay it, same amount. So I think something will be done on that. Either it will be reduced at a minimum or eliminated.
Okay, all right, undeniably one of the biggest problems on the state level, and this has been going on for at least 2 years, and it seems to be continuing, is fixing the Department of Labor in their ability to getting aid to those who need it. So what are you hearing about the technical fixes the Department of Labor is supposedly implementing? And this is mainly computer, software, call center type, it's almost like customer service needs to be fixed over there.
Right. It was obvious in 2020 that customer service went out the door. And a lot of it was blamed on their computer and their whole system.
Right.
Like I told you, I think last time, that I don't know why the system wasn't upgraded. There was money, $40 million allocated to Department of Labor several years ago to upgrade their system. And it never happened for some reason. So we again this year approved an increase in the Department of Labor's budget for more hardware, more software to upgrade their system. As far as I know, that's happening, and I think we're going to see a much better service. The fact is, the Department of Labor was overwhelmed in 2020, and we know that. I don't know if updated system would have handled it or not.
Right.
So I'm not sure we could actually blame that on the system or Department of Labor. It was just circumstances, too many people filing claims and not enough people to handle it. I have some new data. I'm leaving you with a copy of the latest labor update from the Secretary.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that I get this information out. So I'm going to probably read a bunch of this and give you an update on this. This last report I got was the week before Christmas. Well, I guess it was week of Christmas. And since March 15th, 2020, Department of Labor has paid out over 5.1 million weekly claims, totaling over $3.3 billion between regular unemployment and the federal pandemic programs. So we've paid out over $3.3 billion in unemployment in the last 2 years. The call center volume, that was the problem, is the call center wasn't manned enough, and so people were putting on hold or they weren't getting through at all. Has leveled off. Customers are having to wait less time to be connected to the call center person. During the week of Christmas, there were 1,500 initial claims made, along with 5,852 continued claims. The first 2 weeks in December saw a sharp increase of initial claims, probably because of those leaving their jobs because of the vaccine mandates. Under the new Kansas law that we passed under the special session, I think you probably researched that, Cam.
Sure.
We made it very plain that employees who lost their job because of the vaccine mandates would be eligible for unemployment. And so that, I think, allowed a lot of people that were being laid off to actually go in and apply for it. So that's caused the rise in the unemployment claims.
Mhm.
And with this week being the new federal cutoff date to have the new employer programs in place, you're going to see a lot more people saying, no, we're not going to stay, we're going to leave. So I expect that to probably increase again considerably, maybe more than even in 2020. I don't know. We'll have to see. But there's been an increase. I mean, there's been a decrease, a 91% decrease in initial claims from December 2020 till this December, not counting what's going to happen this month. So we've actually had almost a 100% decrease in new initial claims since last year, this time. We've had a 81% increase over the last year to the trust fund, the unemployment trust fund. When this thing first started, we had almost $1 billion in that trust fund, and within 2020, it was down to a little over $300 million. So we've spent a lot of money out of that fund in 2020. It is back up again 81% more than it was last year. So it's up to almost $600 and some million, which is great with the current applicants. But if we have an increase, that's what we've got to live with,
right.
$600 million. I think you also know out of the November vaccine mandate bill that we did, it requires employers to accept all health and religious exemptions.
Right.
And if they don't, then the Department of Labor has to investigate why they did it and why they didn't accept the exemptions. And if they determine that they should have, then they turn it over to the Attorney General for actually going back to the employer and fining them for it. So the Department of Labor is involved in that. Hopefully that doesn't affect the unemployment system. So again, we're bogged down. But hopefully they have enough people to do that. And I think that's the main things I got out of the report. I'm going to leave you the report.
Sure.
You can share it with anybody you want to.
Okay. All right. There have also been, and I haven't heard this in the last week or two, this was more probably early December, but there have been some problems with staff shortages at a number of DMVs around the state. And this, again, it may be more hit and miss than a problem across all DMVs, but does the labor problem, and by labor problem I mean the ability to get people to come and work for you, does the labor problem on a state level go well beyond just the DMV? Are you hearing that at all?
Absolutely. I'm not aware of the DMV staffing problem, but it doesn't surprise me one bit. Every agency is having problems. They're losing people. They're losing more people than they're able to hire. So it is a state issue, not just an agency issue. And there's several reasons for that. We all know. You go around and drive around town, every business has a now hiring sign in the front door or the front window. So it is not just a state problem, it's a local problem, it's a national problem. The workers, there's a shortage in workers. That's because of several reasons. 2020, a lot of people were told they were not essential, laid off, got unemployment. The federal government came in and gave them even more unemployment. So it's almost developed to the point where it pays people not to work more than it does for them to work. So a lot of people that could be working, they're quite happy with what they're getting without having to work. There's also the problem that we have a lot of baby boomers, like me and you. I don't know if you're a baby boomer.
I am a baby boomer.
Okay.
Tail end of it, David. Tail end
I'm
of
the
it.
beginning of it. So there's a lot of us that are just worn out, tired, and have done our 40 years or whatever it is, and are leaving. And that experience walking out the door can't be replaced.
Right.
Just on the spot. So And the other thing that has really bothered me for the last couple of years is state employees have not had an increase in COLA.
That's true.
2020, we didn't get a chance to. We had to adjourn the legislature early.
Mhm.
And so we didn't get a chance to provide the cost of living allowance that was in the budget. So that day, they didn't get it that year. And then this year, it was in the budget again for another 2.5% increase.
Mhm.
And for some reason, it got cut out of the final budget.
Mhm.
So for 2 years, they have not had an increase in COLA. And with the increase in the inflation rate right now, it is, I just don't, we're gonna lose a lot more employees if we don't find a way to, compensate for what they've already lost.
Right, and you're playing catch-up too, because you mentioned the last couple, and actually it goes well beyond the last couple of years for state workers to have gotten any kind of wage increase. This year, there's really no excuse. I mean, with revenues and the kitty being what it is, flush, shouldn't say flush with cash, but with more cash than expected, that's one of the things I think they're gonna come and knocking.
If we're gonna spend money, then that's a good place to spend it, on our workers. I mean, they've been through a lot the last 2 years, and like I said, they haven't got any raise the last 2 years. I know they got one the first year.
Mhm.
First year I was in there, we gave them a 2.5% increase. I don't know what it was before that. They might have had some other years but basically they've been trying to catch up, like you said. And you can only do that for so long, and you gotta say, well, I've gotta go find another job because this is not gonna pay the bills
Right, right.
because of inflation
Yep.
alone.
Yep.
So that's where we stand on that.
Okay. All right, so maybe a little bit of good news here, and it looks like the KDOT projects, and it's part of a plan, kind of a 2-year rotating plan that have been explained by Secretary Lorenz. The projects and the corresponding jobs they provide appear to be staying on track. So what's your take on the department? And I'm not necessarily speaking in terms of local projects that you would see in the Lansing, Leavenworth area, but just overall on a state level, the projects seem to be being rolled out like they're supposed to be on time, and it's providing jobs too. I mean, I think that's about as nonpartisan as you can get right there.
True. 2020, the Eisenhower Transportation Master Plan was approved, and it's got a long list of projects. My feeling is, and I'm not in the transportation, I'm not on the committees or anything like that, so I don't really follow it much. But my feeling is Leavenworth doesn't get the amount of the KDOT money that they should. I just don't see us getting on the list. When they put out a new list of what they're going to spend money on, we seldom get on that list. And other big, Wichita, Johnson County, they all get these big $1 million projects, and we get these little $20,000 things. And I think we have a lot more projects than just those little 20,000. We got some big projects. I know that you're well aware of what we got.
Right.
Every time I go across the Centennial Bridge up in Leavenworth, I keep saying, this bridge can't be repaired another time. It's got to be replaced. It just doesn't make sense to me that Atchison has a nice, modern, 4-lane highway over the Missouri, and we still have this 65-year-old bridge that is 2 lanes, and it is in really bad shape, and we just can't seem to get it up to a priority where they'll do something with it. So I think KDOT has a list. I'm just not sure the governor and the secretary have the same priorities that Leavenworth have as far as the money coming to us to improve our infrastructure.
All right, so let's wrap up. Are there any issues, and I think I ask you this every January when we get together, but are there any issues that maybe for common folk like myself, they may be flying under the radar, we haven't heard about them until we hear about them during the session, but is there anything you're aware of that's going to potentially pop up and we'll be talking about it in a month or two?
We're going to be doing a lot of talking about redistricting.
Sure.
That's in high roll right now. I got a meeting next Monday on it, in fact, talking about redistricting Leavenworth County. So we're going to be redoing all of that, which makes it It's gonna be very political, of course.
Mhm.
Anytime you start messing around with districts and trying to keep everybody happy, it's gonna be a real hassle. So redistricting is gonna be high priority. I think education is going to be a high priority. We're going to have a hard look at education after the last year and all the things that came out of the elections from last year on the school boards and that sort of thing. So there will be a lot of legislation looked at for education. Trying to think what else might be a high on the priority, or maybe just below that's going to surprise somebody. I haven't heard a lot more about any others that are going to, but I'm sure we'll find out real soon. The next couple of weeks, we're going to be getting a lot of bills. As you well know, we still have, in the House alone, we still have over 400 bills on our calendar that we have to look at this year,
Right.
without any new ones. And so it's going to be a very busy year, I'm sure.
Okay. All right. I've been speaking with Representative David French for Movers and Shakers. I'm Ken Miller.